day everyone. For today's video, I'm gonna be discussing with you the meaning of history. And at this point, lesson 1 introduces history as a discipline and as a narrative. So it discusses the limitation of history, knowledge, history as a subjective process, or recreation and historical method, and historiography. Then lesson 2 will present the sources of historical data which is included in your assignment, the written and the non-written sources of history as well as the differentiation of primary and secondary sources of information or data. And then the lesson 3 discusses historical criticism, namely external and internal criticism, and these are important aspects in ascending the authenticity and reliability of primary sources upon which narratives are crafted. So without much ado, so let's start defining history. Okay, so history is derived from the Greek word historia, which means learning by inquiry. So you learn by asking. So the Greek philosopher Aristotle looked upon history as the systematic accounting of a set of natural phenomena, uh, that is also taking into consideration the chronological arrangement of the account. So that's why history is, of course, studying of the past. So this explained that knowledge is derived through conducting a process of scientific investigation of past events. So I hope you are getting across. So the word history is referred usually for accounts of phenomena, especially human affairs in chronological order. That's why dates are important. Kaya marami ang nahihirapan when it comes to history because they'll be memorizing dates and significant persons. These are theories constructed by historians in investigating history. So the factual history. So we have two types of history. We have the factual history and the speculative history. So let's discuss first the factual history. So pag sinabi natin factual history, ano nga ba ito? So ang factual history presents readers the plain and basic information that vis-a-vis the events that took place, which answers the questions what, the time, okay, the time, kailan, okay, the time and date with which the events happened, when, and the place with which the events took place, and people that were involved. Sino ang mga tao? So basically, ang factual history from the word itself, fact, so it answers or it discusses what, when, who, and where. Okay, so factual history. So when it deals with facts only, names, dates, and etc. So it's factual history. What's the difference between factual and speculative? Speculative history. Ang speculative history naman, it goes beyond facts. Okay, it goes beyond facts. It is concerned about the reasons for which events happen. Why? Why it happened? And way and the way they happened, how it happened. And it tries to speculate on the cause and effect of an event. So that is according to Cantal, Cardinal, Espino, and Galindo 2014. So take note that we have two different types of history. We have the factual history and the speculative history. So history deals with the study of the past, as I mentioned a while ago. So it It studied the past events. Individuals who write about history are called historians. Okay, ang tawag sa mga tao na nagsusulat tungkol sa history ay historian. So ano ang kaibahan ng historian sa mga historiographer? So mamaya dadaan natin yan. And they seek to understand the present by examining what went before. So they undertake arduous historical research to come up with a meaningful and organized rebuilding of the past. But whose past are we talking about? So this is the basic question that the historian needs to answer because this sets the purpose and framework of a historical account. Hence, salient feature of historical writing is the facility to give meaning and impact value to the group of people about their past. So the practice of historical writing now is what we call historiography. Okay? So the practice of historical writing is historiography. So the traditional method in doing historical research that focus on gathering of documents from the different libraries and archives to form a pool of evidence needed in making a descriptive or analytical narrative is historiography. And who are the people behind? We call them historiographers. Okay? So, there's a limitation of historical knowledge. So, kailan nagkakaroon ng limitation sa historical knowledge? Okay? So, the incompleteness of record. So, take note of this. The incompleteness of record has limited man's knowledge of history because later at the end of this video, there is an exercise. There's an exercise that you have to answer. Okay, and there are questions there that talks about incompleteness of record. Okay, so the incompleteness of record has limited man's knowledge of history. So, most human affairs happen without leaving any evidence or record of any kind. No artifacts, or if there are, no further evidence of the human setting in which to place surviving artifacts. So, nagtotoo ito. Minsan, nililimit ang history dahil kulang sa mga artifacts. Kumbaga, incomplete ang record. Although, it may have happened, but the past has perished forever with only occasional traces. Hanggang nakalimutan na yung past kasi wala namang natira. Okay? Only few traces only. So, the whole history of the past, which is also called as history as actuality, can be known to a historian only through the surviving record. So take note of this. Or history as record. And most of history as record is only a tiny part of the whole phenomenon. So even the archaeological and anthropological discoveries are only small parts discovered from the total past. So itong mga archival um, evidences, itong mga artifacts natin, kukunti pa lang yan. Okay? Dahil walang mga natira, kaya merong incompleteness sa record ng ating history. Okay? And the role now of the archaeologists, of the historians, and the rest of the experts which talks about history is to look for records, okay, that will tell that this history happened. Okay? So historians study the records or evidences that survive the time because these records tell history from what they understood, a credible part of the record. However, their claims, many, remains variable as there can be historical records that could be discovered, which may affirm, or refute those that they have already presented. So this explains the incompleteness of the object that the historian study. I hope this is clear with you. Okay? So let's proceed to the history as the subjective process of recreation. So when we speak of recreation, from the word recreate, okay, from the incomplete evidence, historians strive to restore the total part of mankind, na yung mga nawala na yon. So these historians strive to restore. They try to look for evidences. They do it from the point of view that human beings live in different times. So kaya nga sa assignment nyo, we have the primary sources of history and the secondary sources of history, which we will be discussing in the later chapter. So they do it from the point of view that human beings live in different times and that their experiences may be somehow comparable, or that their experiences may have significantly differed contingent on the place and time. So for the historians, history becomes only that part of the human past which can be meaningfully reconstructed from the available records and from inference regarding their setting. Okay? So in short, a historian's aim is verisimilitude, which means the truth, authenticity, and plausibility. Again, historians' aim is verisimilitude about the past. Unlike the study of the natural science that has objectively measurable phenomena, the study of history is subjective process as documents and relics are scattered and do not together comprise the total object that the historian is studying. Some of the natural scientists, such as the geologists, the paleozoologists, who study fossils from the traces of a perished past, greatly resemble historians in this regard. But, of course, they differ at a certain point since historians deal with human testimonies as well as physical traces. So we have, uh, let's talk about historical method and historiography. So, ano naman ang historical method? So, ang historical method is the process of critically examining and analyzing the records and survivals of the past, okay, and the imaginative reconstruction of the past from the data, derived, which is the historiography. So by means of history and historiography rather, both of which are frequently grouped together simply as historical method. So historian endeavors is to reconstruct as much of the past of mankind. So even in this limited effort, however, the historian is handicapped. He or she is rarely can tell the story even of a part of the past as it occurred. So for the past, conceived of as something actually occurred. So obviously, it limits upon the kinds of record and of imagination that the historians may use. So these limitations distinguish history from fiction, poetry, drama, and fantasy. So that is what we mean by historical method. Okay, so what about historical analysis? Historical analysis is also an important element of historical method. Okay, in historical analysis, we have historians has three roles. Okay, one is the historian select the subject to investigate. Okay, pinipili nila na ang subject na investigahan. Okay, in Tagalog. Pangalawa, they collect probable sources of information on the subject. Okay, so they collect probable sources of information. Halimbawa, World War II. So, sino ba ang makukuhanan nila ng information about World War II? Of course, yung mga taong buhay pa at nakaranas ng World War II. So, maghanap sila ngayon ng mga sources of information. Okay, pangatlo, they examine the sources of genuineness in part or in a whole. Okay, may ano ba to? Authentic ba tong sources of information na to? At pang-apat, extract credible particulars from the sources. Okay, so they extract a specific, okay, specific and credible source of history. So the synthesis of the particulars thus derived is what we call historiography also, or under historiography. So synthesis and analysis cannot be entirely separated since they have a common ground, which is the ability to understand the past through some meaningful, evocative, and convincing historical or cross-disciplinary connections between a given historical issue and other historical contexts, periods, or themes. So that is a synthesis and analysis. Okay. So before I end this discussion, I have here exercise 1.1. So you can answer this. You can take picture and you can send this to my email or turn this in your LMS because I will be posting this video in your LMS. I hope you learned something from this video. Thank you so much.